Hi, everyone. We're likely going to have some more folks come through. Pleased to have Rashmi Vital from Conversica and Cheryl Kingstone from 451 Research. And they're going to be discussing with us today the augmented workforce, a maturity model for intelligent virtual assistant adoption. And thank you, Rashmi and Cheryl, for joining us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, thank you. Happy to be here. So Cheryl, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I mean, today we really are all about the workforce and where we are. So this is myself and this is Rashmi. So hi, Rashmi.
Hey, Cheryl, good to see you.
Good to see you. And we're really here to have more of an interactive discussion today between the two of us. And it's a great topic because it really is all about digital transformation, but in context to this augmented workforce and the shift to digital experiences and what we can do. And when we talk about building this positive relationship with consumers, it really is a core part of winning that experience. And we have to take into account some of these new technologies and the relationship and the connection across that customer journey, whether it be sales, whether it be customer success teams, whether it be marketing teams. All of these are really trying to embrace digital transformation with new tools, new technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And that's really what we're going to learn here, because as we're really embracing some of these new technologies due to COVID, prior to COVID, after COVID, we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to scale ourselves. And the role of intelligent automation is really going to change the future experience. Next slide. So one of the things I really do like to point out is, we have to respond to the change. And as we escalate a lot of this information that is coming at us and it's changing, and going forward, businesses are really going to have to leverage new ways of working for the future. And we're going to have to embed things like intelligent automation just to scale. And the fact that we're looking to be more data-driven and bring sales and marketing and service together, that's what's absolutely essential here. And Rashmi, you can really talk about also how we're trying to really respond to this pace of change.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about the investments organizations are making today in their digital transformation initiatives, historically it was over a year, multi-year time span. COVID changed all of that, and it accelerated your investments. And it also asked you a very important question as business leaders in your organization. Am I making the right digital transformation investments, right? And so I love how you said digital transformation in context not only to what's most appropriate to your business, context to what's happening out into the market, but context is what's going to continue to accelerate and drive your business continuity forward and your business progress forward. That is super huge.
Absolutely. And we really do expect the coronavirus, as you said, to be that inflection point that's going to make the reshuffling of what we call this proverbial deck. And one of the things we have to understand is who's doing this right. And so what we've done is we've taken a look at the differences between digitally driven organizations and ones that are potentially digitally delayed. And how we define that is, when you take a look at that, we've looked at companies that have formal strategy of digital transformation. So these are ones that actually have strategies versus ones that actually could be just only in the planning or consideration stage or no planning stage. And then we also look at their adoption of technology. And so if they're early adopters of technology, or if they're more pragmatic or conservative or skeptical. But what's most important and what's most interesting is the fact that when we do look at some of these new technologies adoptions, whether it's going to be more advanced customer experience management technologies, whether it's adopting cloud or automated intelligence or machine learning, what's important is to know that the digitally delayed is 2 to 4 times less likely to have anything in process. And so if you really don't have a formal strategy today and you're not really looking at different technologies, you're gonna fall behind the 8 ball. And that's why it's really important to understand what these business initiatives are and what digitally driven organizations are actually doing right. And so when we do take a look at this, this is a way that we took a look at the differences between, again, those digitally driven organizations and ones that were delayed. And while we feel this survey right during COVID, even after COVID, it was still really important. And customer retention is absolutely essential. And so when we look at customer retention, it's not just about retaining and servicing our customers and reducing cost. It's about growing revenue through those existing customers. It's about understanding and maximizing the revenue, whether it's being through those, what we would call customer success teams that are key to that retention, or it's about helping sales and marketing and service really be that critical linchpin so that we have feedback and we encourage and understand what's going on. And that's why we talk about using these intelligence assistants to help scale. And Rashmi, you do have examples of really how we can understand and why these business initiatives are so critically important today.
They're so critically important. And I loved how you really focused not just on the retention of the customer as a unit, but the revenue that you're retaining as part of it, especially during the past 6 months and these hard times. And as we're entering into a recovery period, all indicators are suggesting that economically we're going to continue to recover and grow our economy as we continue to move forward. And what is so key is that the revenue that you get from retaining your customers, that is the power line into your organization. It is the blood, from which, you're going to operate. And so, but that doesn't prevent you from stopping to get new customers. And what I love about this diagram, it shows so simply and kind of boldly the fact that if you are digitally driven, you are more likely to grow your revenue by selling to more and existing customers. You are more likely to drive retention. You are more likely to deliver on a better experience, because in today's world, now more than ever, you need to be digitally enabled to do so.
Absolutely. And so that's why I like to say, to remain relevant in the eyes of the consumers, enterprises, businesses, large and small, they really need to invest in contextual experiences at every step of that buyer's journey, right? Because it's B2B, it's also B2C. And what we're trying to do here with today's discussion is really look at that augmented workforce, so that we're building that relationship from first touch all the way up, so that we're upselling appropriately, that we're leveraging our workforce, that we're reducing customer churn, we're supporting marketing. But in order to maximize the value that we're providing our customers, again, we need to scale ourselves. And that's really what we're here to talk about today, which is what these intelligent virtual assistants are really doing to augment the human workforce and allow deeper connection into the experience. And so what's really important is to take a look at what are the digital transformation initiatives, and let's look at the digital leaders and laggards again. Because when we take a look at digital leaders and laggards, what you want to see here is how important it is to prioritize customer experience over costs. But when we look at this, and we look at customer experience over cost, take a look at the other things that are happening here. If you're digitally delayed, you're prioritizing cost over operational efficiencies. And I do understand in today's world that's really important. But look at the other areas, the competitive differentiation, the ability to innovate, the fact that they're leveraging their data for growth. That's where we have to drill down into it. So it's not just about an empty promise of improving the customer experience. It's about a balance of doing everything. And if you're digitally delayed, you're not going to really have this. And so Rashmi, I know you really like the fact that, digitally driven organizations are trying to improve the customer experience, and you can really bring this to life in your world also.
Oh, absolutely. And I always say this, trying to reduce costs and cost deflect is important, but I say it's a defensive game plan. What you really want to do is really focus on that customer experience and think about top line growth. The two are tightly correlated. If you're going to drive a better customer experience, you're going to drive top line growth. That has been proven, and we see that quite a bit within the customers that we work with. And so what I say is, when you're thinking about customer experience, when you're thinking about driving top line growth, you now have a offensive game plan. And that's super important. That means you're going to be offensively leading the pack in your market. You're going to be offensive in trying to, put your competitors in a box and really kind of drive your progress forward. 100%. Totally agree, Cheryl.
But there's complexity, right? There's complexity surrounding this whole customer experience, and everyone seems to be pointing fingers. And so some research I put out was, do you have one department or person involved with planning and orchestrating and managing these overall customer experience initiatives? And I purposely didn't say customer acquisition. I didn't say customer retention. I said orchestrating the overall experience. And so when we look at this, it's 50-50. It's been growing a little bit more. Digitally driven organizations are a little bit more ahead here with 67%. But when we do look at it, what's interesting is the fragmentation, and that's what's so important. So how are we going to make sure that customer success and customer service has what they need? Sales, even IT comes into play here, marketing, the digital experience. Everyone, even if you do have one department in charge, has to make sure that we're collaborating and we're improving and we're looking at it across all the different departments, which is absolutely critical, right, Rashmi?
Completely. And this is what's interesting, right? Will there be like a single point of contact across an organization to really coordinate, plan, and orchestrate this across an organization? I don't think so. But I think what will happen is when you're implementing those digital transformation investments, right? When you are thinking about intelligent automation, it is intelligent automation, not just within your own organization, but how intelligent automation can drive across departments, across multiple departments within your entire company. And the key is are you being able to transfer kind of the historical knowledge? Are you able to transfer the attributes about a customer, the personalization, the profile, everything that lets you understand the history of the customer as that customer is going through its journey within your organization? And that's how you start tying the different departments together. And then you could also come back and hold different departments accountable and responsible. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it goes towards that intelligent automation, as you said. So it really is a CX enabler. And so when we talk about the face of COVID-19, I know everyone's really sick of it, but the data that we have is 43% of businesses, if we want to really move forward, we have to understand what's going on. And so we have to look at all the different use cases. So although marketing and sales teams are essentially driving the same results, they frequently find themselves pulling in multiple different directions. So even in a B2B environment, you're taking a look at some of the issues here. And so what our data talks about is when we look at the digitally driven versus digitally delayed leaders, the top CX initiatives, as you said, are really talking about improving customer acquisition and customer service, that you're looking at priorities for intelligent automation, that you're investing in real-time collaboration. And this is really important because it comes across for things like sales and service. And when we look at things around sales and service, we're looking at things as it relates to, sorry, I just want to pull something up, as it relates to a lot of the expanding sales capacity, the better pipeline crossability, the ability to have more accountability. And so when we do look at a lot of this, this is where we have to make sure that, are we making the right investments? Are we looking at some of these new digital assistants to provide sales enablement with the tools that they need? Are we empowering our customer support and customer service to scale? And then are we really sharing information? Let's take a look at, lead management. Sales and marketing is always pointing fingers. So when we look at a lot of these different use cases, that's absolutely essential to understand where we're going. And so exactly. So when we look at it, it's about putting it all together with automation, with AI, with machine learning to be more transformative. And so that's what's going to drive success. And so 60% of the top goal is really about, as we said earlier, revenue. But the digital leaders are understanding that they're using more AI and machine learning for workforce optimization. They're understanding what it means to have virtual assistants to scale. They understand what it means to use new tools to respond quicker to inquiries. And that's really where we find a lot of differentiation here in more mature organizations than ones that are more delayed. And Rashmi, this is really a summary that's really going to start building up to where we're trying to take this discussion today.
Yeah, it really is. And so people out there in the audience might think, well, what do you mean exactly by intelligent automation, and how is that related to these technologies that we're talking about. I'm going to give just a little bit of a 101 on that, and then it could really lead into the conversation we're going to have next. And really, when you think about intelligent automation, it's really about the ability to automate business processes, workflows, but also human to human interaction in a way that can drive towards the next best action or a completed task. And you could use intelligent automation uses technologies like AL, machine or deep learning, right? It uses process automation, robotic process automation to automate the actual workflow, and then being able to take some form of action, right? Whether that's a record update or some kind of verification or some kind of input into a system. So when you have the combination of the intelligence that AI is going to give you, the constant learning that the deep learning, machine learning is going to give you, and then the automation of the workflow, right, within the context of your business task or your human interaction that you need, or the communication that you have, you're now talking about intelligent automation. And one of the best ways that you could think about instantiating intelligent automation within your own marketing, sales, and customer success organizations is through a solution called what's called intelligent virtual assistants. Intelligent virtual assistants actually allow the ability to engage with contacts, whether that is a prospective buyer, whether that's a customer, or even in your partner ecosystem, if you consider them as part of your, kind of your vendor ecosystem, you're conducting business with them, you can engage with them in a natural two-way conversation to determine the next best action. Now, there's many flavors of these, and I think as Cheryl and I have been talking about this for a long time and going back and forth, and we're talking to different customer bases, we sat back and we realized, there is just so much confusion around what is intelligent virtual assistant. How's that different from a chatbot? How do I think about it if I'm trying to make investments in this because I want to drive top line growth, I want to improve the customer experience, and I want to reduce my costs and drive operational efficiencies? How should I think about making initial investments and then growing those investments across our organization? And so kind of with that, Cheryl, what did we come up with?
We came up with a maturity model. Absolutely. And what it did was it identified 4 stages of intelligent virtual assistant maturity. And when you look at the variation and you look at the different aspects of it, and we're going to dive down and give you specific use cases across it. But what people are really trying to understand is, where can you get the business value? So the value created along with the depth, like when do I need something more than a chatbot? And when is that not going to give me the information that I need? And so we find a variation based on how deeply embedded automated assistants were within the enterprise and how it spanned different departments. And so as the enterprise became more mature, they were more deeply leveraged by using more intelligent automation, more machine learning, and they were able to get more value out of it. And so that's where you have to take a look at it. So we looked at things like the quality of the interactions. We looked at the technology attributes, the depth of machine learning and AI. We also have into different use cases that really are available and the degree of adoption. And so that's where you have to look at it, where you're going to go from a level 1, which is a basic chatbot, which may or not be solving what you're trying to do. As you start getting into your crawl, walk, run, and you start doing, and you need more contextual assistance as you go into these personal assistants, and then the holy grail, which is about really scaling your workforce and having more of an autonomous assistant. And so we do have some actual examples here, Rashmi, that you can walk them through the value and the depth of experience and how you can go through the different use cases between level 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Absolutely. And know that each level here is very applicable to your organization. I think the question is, just think of this as you want the virtual assistant to support more complex use cases and be more human-like in its execution of those use cases, that's where you need to start really thinking about expanding what it is that you have. And why is that the case? Well, let's start with just understanding what level 1 is. Level 1 are the chatbots. Now, they come in many forms and many flavors. Usually it's a user-initiated interaction, meaning, yes, while you could, if you are talking about a website chat, that's a chat interface that's on your website. You have messenger chat, that's something that's going to come through your social platform like Facebook Messenger, right, or WhatsApp. And then you could even have this kind of notion around maybe just a chat built into an ad display, as you kind of see with this Emirates example that I have on the right, which is literally a digital ad display, but inside it could say, tell me about your trip, and you can start the chat there, which I think is really, really innovative. But usually user initiated, meaning that I, as a visitor to any one of these kind of interfaces, I'm going to begin the conversation. And then they take on some forms, right? The interactions are usually chatbot oriented, which means select one of the following. Look at this is the WHO's WhatsApp kind of chat bot. As you can see, when you come in and type hi, you're going to get a list of selection points. It's select one of the following. What are you interested in? Latest numbers, how to protect yourself, etc. You type in that number, 3, it said you get your questions answered, and then something pops up. What pops up is an FAQ, right? And this, because I'm asking for questions, and these are pre-built Q&A. So really, this is very much so, when you think about it, majority of chatbots are rule-based workflows, right? So rule-based, meaning that there's very defined, structured workflows, conditional logic. If it does this, then do that, right? And so that means somebody's sitting back writing a ton of rules. Here, at the minimum, there are 8 rules that have been written to support the 8 different chatbot selections. How deep it goes after that really depends on how far you wanted to take it. But this is very much so something you have to code. It is manual, and you've got to be able, and anything you see here in terms of the text that's coming back was written from scratch for this specific purpose. Oftentimes, it's one channel supported. For example, is it on a messenger, like a messenger app? Is it on a website chat? Is it voice, right? Very much so one channel supported. And as I said, you've got to write your own text interactions. Most common use cases for this, we've run into this in many different forms or flavors, right? You could come onto a website chat, you could navigate, like it helps navigate website visitors. I always like to say a chat on a website is helping to connect visitors to the information that they seek on that website, right? And so whether they're seeking to actually connect with somebody live, whether they're seeking to go to a web page, whether they're seeking to learn more about an offer or promotion, whether they're seeking to schedule even a demo or something like that, that's kind of the general gist of what a website chat will do. The other area that you're seeing this pop up more is around e-commerce transactions. So if you are now, with the boom of e-commerce, right? E-commerce has grown so much as a result of COVID. Every retail, not every, but most retail transactions are now done online. Being able to have assistance while you're thinking about purchasing something is super important. You're seeing these pop up. And then as we talked about, answering FAQ, just from a customer service and support orientation. The value around chatbots is time savings and cost deflection. Instead of having a human answer this, you can certainly try and automate this through a chatbot. But I think as we were talking about, right, and as your stats indicated, Cheryl, we're looking to move from not just talking about time savings and cost deflection, but how do you now drive towards better customer experience and ultimately top line growth and revenue acceleration. And so one of the things here that we have is what we think about is when you now start thinking about why do you have these levels of IVAs, like intelligent virtual assistants, because they are going to now take on and be able to be smarter, and they're smarter because they're AI powered, and they're powered to deliver on some use cases. And so I would say this, to reach new heights of productivity and performance, right? We have to think as business leaders in our organization, we have to know that our workforce will need to be augmented with intelligent automation solutions, these AI powered assistants, right? And we're seeing specifically, what we're seeing is the increasing adoption of these AI powered assistants to help organizations attract, acquire, and grow their customers at scale. And before I kind of get into what this looks like, I just want to stop back and Cheryl, just kind of throw it back to you. When I say that, right, when I say that, the workforce will need to be augmented with these types of solutions, how is that resonating with the customer you're talking to as part of 451?
Absolutely. I mean, everybody for one needs help, right? We're getting buried. Everything shut down. And so while we're in a digital world, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're able to scale ourselves as well as we've had in the past. And so when we do take a look at the whole journey aspect, there's a lot of interest in sales and sales enablement to make sure that they're optimized for the right approach. So when we're talking about making that salesperson effective, absolutely one of the best low-hanging fruit angles that we can get at. Now let's take a look at the marketing and the marketing solution and looking at acquiring. Another way that we're absolutely in desperate need to scale, but also make sure that everyone is optimized and working at the right level. And so we're seeing increased budget and increased revenue from that standpoint, again, focusing on making sure that we're doing the right workflow. So that's really where you talk about scaling yourself and suggesting the intelligent automation and virtual assistants can play there. And then in the customer success teams, they can't touch as many customers as need be. Again, we still have issues of people have been laid off and we're trying to do more with less. The customer success teams want to make sure that they have those cadence of conversations and they can't do it alone. And so that is where if we really can make sure that it's more intelligent and we're able to drive connections with our customers across the entire customer journey, that's where we're going to start seeing that value created. And so that we can attract, acquire, and then grow the business, which is what everyone's trying to do in this very difficult environment today.
Absolutely. And so for those of you who are out there, just kind of simply put, consider the organization, the departments responsible for each of these kind of verbs, right? These words, right? Attract, acquire, and grow. At its simplest form, we say marketing is responsible for building awareness and interest in the market in order to attract prospects, whether that's prospective buyers or what we like to call leads in the B2B world, right?
Yes,
Right.
right.
Then you've got sales. Sales ideally works with those leads and works them into real opportunities and then drive those opportunities to closure for new customer acquisition, right?
Yep.
And then you've got customer success, and however that might be configured in your organization, right? It could be whether that's a team that's actually called customer success, whether that's account management, whether it's customer service, customer support, or customer care, as I've even seen it be called. What it's really focused on, and you said this earlier, and it was really true, what it's really focused on is that post-acquisition revenue responsibility, right? Of retaining and growing the value, not only of the customer, but for the customer, right? So it's one thing is how do I think about it internally as my own business leader in that area, saying how am I growing the lifetime value of my customer? But in order to do that, you have to grow the value for the customer.
Correct. And everyone's looking for guidance here, right? It's just we can't do it with the staff that we have. And think about as things change, businesses wound up maybe hibernating, but they were interested before and now they're back and we're trying to engage with them again. If sales doesn't know which ones are actually active and they're dialing for dollars, that's a waste of time. If customer success doesn't know when to do the right touching and is constantly just going at a blind list, again, wasting a lot of time. So this is where companies are really trying to increase the value of intelligent automation, along with being more insightful and contextual at point of interaction, which sometimes humans can't do. And the intelligent robots can actually do better than we can, or the intelligent virtual assistants to be more accurate.
Yeah, and what I'd say here is really great. So what do these look like? So there are definitely AI-powered conversations that you can rely and trust upon the virtual assistant to conduct, and then that complements the people-powered conversations, right? And so when you think about, okay, so I'm in marketing, sales, or customers, how do I think about this, right? And so what an AI-powered conversation is really good at doing is, as we talked about website chat, for sure, there's those use cases, but it could also drive that pre-event and post-event engagement, right? So how do I get people to an event? How do I follow up thereafter? How do I think about, again, marketers, put your marketing hat on. I've got a bunch of leads that maybe are inactive or dormant. How do I resurrect those? I know my people power isn't going to do it. They're focused on what's active and what's hot, but how do I make sure that I'm constantly cultivating those leads into something that can turn into opportunities? And then, given how much automation today marketing teams have adopted, right, their ability to generate a lot of interest is great, right? And frequently is the fact that marketing's ability to generate demand outweighs sales capacity to handle it. And
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And you've got this capacity challenge issue where sales just can't keep up, and they're going to rely on kind of the old tricks that they have, which is what they think is the best quality leads and what they think are hot leads. But if you could find a way, and if you can use this augmented workforce to qualify those leads and send them over to sales faster, then sales can now focus on what it is that they do best, right? What people do best. People create value, right? And how do they do that? They do that by building trusted relationships. They do that by demonstrating and solving the complex problems for their prospective buyer. And they show them kind of that future path of success that they want to be on. The other area too, and people go, well, okay, that's great for just focusing on those types of lead engagement and lead follow-up, but there's points within the sales cycle where opportunities can go flat. Sales has done their outreach, they're not getting any responses back anymore, and so they move on to the next thing. That means that those leads that have been left behind, you can continue to touch those with AI-powered conversations to accelerate those opportunities, right? And then again, allow the people to do what they do best, create that value, show and demonstrate why the investment is important to make, and then be able to push that to closure. And then as you talking about, right, when we think about that post-sale acquisition, there's so much that AI-powered conversations can do, from onboarding a customer to maybe making sure that there's those, whether those monthly or quarterly business reviews are scheduled, how much time is spent by those account management or customer success teams just trying to get the meeting on the calendar versus having the meeting.
And one of the things I forgot to point out is the shift in business models today to a subscription economy. And so as we are really shifting into that renewal side of it, these teams become absolutely essential to not just grow revenue, but keep existing customers happy, because you don't want them to leave. They're absolutely critical, especially in the subscription economy world of the future.
Perfect point. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And imagine, right, when now you have, these needs and these use cases, and you can see where AI-powered conversations come from, you have to elevate the type and the sophistication of the virtual assistant that you're using, which leads us to level 2. And that means now you need to start thinking about how your assistants can handle the context, not only the situation that they're in, but the context of that interaction and situation. So you must add AI to the equation. These virtual assistants should be built around AI. You'll get better departmental adoption. It will help drive towards, drive engagement towards that next best action. And just fundamentally, it's got to use AI to derive the context. Means that, and not to get too technical on folks, but if you're having a dialogue, that dialogue, even if it's text-based, it's made up of phrases, of sentences, of what we call intents and requests. The virtual assistant has to be smart enough to be able to identify the entities, extract them, and make sense of it, right? So that it knows how to respond to you in kind. I think the second area here is that you see in level 2 moving away from just one channel, one use case, to 2 channels of communication, to start bringing in a little bit more of that element of human likeness, that you will start seeing a little bit more of that in 2. So let's take an example, right? So, okay, let's say you start on website chat as a visitor, you join a website, and you begin the conversation with a virtual assistant. That virtual assistant will engage in chat. And as I said, it kind of does typically four things. Either you want to learn more and it'll direct you to that place to learn more on the website, or send you the actual link to that piece of content. You want to schedule a demo or schedule something that maybe a free trial even, and sends you a link to that. But maybe you want to even contact a representative. Now, if you are a prospective buyer, that might be a sales representative. If you are an existing customer, that might be a support representative, totally entirely based on what your request is. And then maybe you just might want to simply ask a question. Well, you want that to be powered by something that's going to understand the context, because it's not just a chatbot like you saw in the chatbots, but it could also be an open text field where you're writing something in, and we know that people can ask a question multiple different ways, right? The key is, how does it respond to it? How does it interact with it? And so once you're able to actually send the correlating response to the request, then what you can do is that start taking action. This level 2 is far more action oriented than you ever saw in level 1, because it's now not, usually in level 1, it would stop right after it's answered the question and it moves on. Level 2 is now the fact of, I could take the action, I'm going to update the systems of record. Now I'm going to be a good teammate. I'm going to notify the rep. Now I'm bringing in another department. I'm bringing in sales. So before, mostly marketing can run the top, right? But now I want to bring in sales, because based on the request, it could be a sales or service rep that might need to be involved. So you want to alert them. And then now what you want to be able to do is shift the conversation, because you're no longer having the conversation only on chat. You now need to shift the conversation to a different channel. And that channel in this case is email, because now the IVA can follow up with that lead, that visitor that came on your site, and say, hey, just checking in to make sure that the sales or service rep got in touch with you. Please let me know. If not, we'll take care of it as soon as possible, right? And so it's that combination of intelligence, adding AI to the equation, taking action, and now having that conversation, a little bit more human likeness across two channels, while making sure you're involving the right teammate so that they could carry on the conversation. When we think now about level 3, and before I jump into there, Cheryl, any thoughts as you're looking at that on level 2?
Yeah, well, it really is growing from level 2 to level 3. It's really important. And what's most important is the fact that it's the multimodal, the fact that you can potentially communicate across the different channels, the fact that in a B2B sense, people are still responding in email, right? It's still a channel that people want to respond on. You know, as much as we're saying digital and chat and this and that, business is still getting done in email, and we're getting buried with it. And so how do we know, and if it is just generic and it's not in context, you're not going to get a response, because it's going to feel very empty. And so in the world of connecting as an emotion, so one of the things I say is emotion is the currency of experience, using that level of personalization is absolutely essential to make that connection.
Agreed.
Which is going to lead you into level 3.
Yeah, level 3, and personalization is so key. So when we thought about, what I loved about what 451 put on the maturity models, that it thought about value and thought about experience. In order to deliver on that experience, you have to think now, how do I build that into a virtual assistant? It no longer is just, an interface to a single communication channel. It now has to be built upon the depth of what I'd say a platform feeding into the virtual assistant. You need to have the brain center, the guts and the brain center of the IVA needs to become more sophisticated, because what's happening, you're not just having one-way communication that you could have, with a chatbot, right? You now need to have an interactive bi-directional dialogue. You're going from now.
It's the heart and the brain.
It's the heart and the brain, right? And then you got to have that notification. It goes from just being notifying to being action oriented, from going from programmatic. Like how all of us know that when we're interacting with a chatbot, that it's programmatic. You could take it off its happy path really fast. The key is, how do you turn to more human likeness, and then how do you get to how do you get to it being super accurate? And what you need is what I love calling, actually, I'm just going to show these two things first. You want the AI assistant to work in the following way here. You want it to engage. You want it to initiate contact. Remember before we said users begin the initiation here, an IVA is going to start working more autonomously. It's going to initiate the contact. It's going to, let's just take a classic example. Let's take the marketing and sales side of the house. When you get leads that are coming in and then you want to start doing lead engagement and follow-up, what happens? Well, usually you send those over to a BDR team, and a BDR, a business development team, a sales development team, an inside sales team, whatever you call them. They will start working those leads. Now they're going to work across 3 different modals themselves. They're going to go email, calls, and usually social selling, right? And so let's just talk about the emails first, right? They're going to initiate the contact. They're going to try and put something into a cadence for 7 to 10 times. They don't always execute on that. And you know that as the emails progress from email 1 to email 7, they're not as high quality. Let's just put it that way, right? And fair enough. It happens. We're human, right? It is what it is. The interesting thing here with a virtual assistant now at level 3 is that every email that it's generating is personalized based on the attributes that are feeding into it from the system of records that you have around your contacts. So typically that's in a CRM system, could be in a marketing automation system, as because we're just talking about that sales and marketing front. So it's generating those emails. When a response comes back, that response is coming back in an email, and it could have random set of stuff coming back, right? It could be answering the question that was presented to the prospective buyer, but it could also have other intents and requests. And so the virtual assistant has to really be able to interpret that reply well, understand the different intents. There could be different informational messages in there. It's got to be able to extract that. And then it's got to be able to craft a response tailored to that person and to what they received back, that continues to engage them and drives them towards that next best action. And that action orientation is key. Being able, if you learn something new, some informational statement, new phone number, new maybe out of the office, maybe a new contact information, you need to be able to extract that, take it, and now insert it into the system of record. Don't just notify the rep that something has changed. Actually do the task of inserting and updating the system. You need pillars of intelligence to do this. And we like to call kind of the 5 pillars of intelligence, upon which, like, this is the foundation that your virtual assistants are tapping into the brain center. So it needs to be able to perceive, right? So receive information, messages that it's receiving. It needs to perceive well. It needs to understand, as we talked about, based on the interaction that's occurring. It has to be able to decide, right? It isn't just leaving it up to the rep to decide. It has to be able to decide to take the next best action, act upon that, and then continuously learn. Now, what's really interesting about the learning, people always think, oh, it's just machine learning, so it's learning on its own. This learning is twofold. The learning here has to be not only machine learning, and there's deeper models for machine learning, but also there also needs to be some level of human interaction. And the human interaction can be a very great customer experience in the sense that it could be left up to the administrator of this to say, hey, if the virtual assistant was not exactly 100% sure on what it should do, it will pop up a little alert and it will say, hey, can you help me out here? Either that could be driven by the administrator, or it could be driven by the vendor that's giving you this virtual assistant. At the end of the day, allowing both human in the loop as well as machine learning only creates a stronger pillar of intelligence. And this has to be based off of data-rich backbone. So having hundreds of millions, billions of interactions, having the tight integrations into the systems of record. This is not a monolith where you're supposed to have the platform have all the data attributes. You want to tap into all the other systems of records to grab the attributes that matters, to use it to drive that personalization. You don't want to write every single interaction, and you shouldn't have to. Virtual assistants should come with a deep conversation and skill library that you don't have to write, that it is written for you. You can configure with business specific language, but just you're not the one who's going to have to write out, 10 different types of workflow emails for this to work. It should already be there. And then you want a high level of accuracy. If you've got the right pillars of intelligence and the data feeding through it, your accuracy rate's going to go up. Having a 98% accuracy rate should become the industry standard. And fortunately, it's not there yet. I would say, and this, for when you're looking at the level of maturity, there are very few vendors that are delivering on 98%. Happy to say Conversica is one of them. But that being said, this is really critical because that gives you the confidence to allow the virtual assistant to work on your behalf. And it is superhuman-like in terms of in terms of how it comes across the customer experience. So when you take a look at this email exchange, right, Cheryl, and you see, can you tell that what's in the blue is actually coming from a virtual assistant versus what's in the gray?
No. Well, it's hard to see right here, but what's most important is to understand that in order to get here, you did have a human in the loop. So it's learned from the human, but you want to make sure that it actually acts human-like, right? So no, you really can't. If done correctly, you can't. And so that's where you have a benefit of the data science. So one of the things I did want to point out to is the action that takes, right? So it's about the data science, it's about the machine learning that goes at it. It's about the fact that you can deliver those messages consistently, right? So humans aren't necessarily consistent. That's another thing, right? So, and you want to make sure that you're automating your best sales rep or your best marketing person or your best customer person. So understanding best practices, and that's something you can focus on because you can automate a human that way, and that's where everyone's trying to go at. And so absolutely, I would say this is really a best practice, is to ensure that it's human-like at scale. That's what this is showing.
And that's right. And it's just not human-like in the way that it's interacting with the prospective buyer in this case. It's also the action orientation that it's taking. So at every stage, as it's learning more from its interaction with the prospective buyer, it alerts both the system of record and the person who could the actual human who would own this opportunity. And even things like understanding if the phone number, knowing that it's a work from home number, not just an office number, updating that into the system, handing off the workflow of actually handing it off to the rep and then notifying the rep, right? And then doing the follow-up, like asking, did you actually connect? Because the reason why that the virtual assistant here wants to reconnect back with in this case, Bill, is because it established first the relationship with Bill, and it knows the relationship with Bill. It wants to follow up and make sure it's delivering on that experience. So we talked so much so here about experience, right? When you start getting to level 2, 3, and 4, it's about delivering on 2 vectors. One is experience and the human likeness of that experience. And then the second thing was value. What value are you getting out of this? And what's really interesting and what we've been able to see so far, when I think about value, I think about it in kind of 4 simple ways. It's time saved, productivity increase, dollars earned, dollars saved, right? So there's a savings number, there's an earning number, and there's a productivity number. And when we see organizations augmenting their workforces with virtual assistants, they're achieving some amazing results, right? And this is across that attract, acquire, scale. First off, for marketing leaders, what you're seeing is that finally all the leads that you're generating are getting the attention that they deserve, right? And so and you have confidence the fact that you can potentially achieve 100% lead coverage, which means that those leads are going to get thoroughly worked to determine if they're ready to talk to sales. If they're not ready, fine, put them back into your nurture program and have that, see when they're going to maybe potentially come back and market again. If they are sales ready, now you're passing them on to your sales team. This is what's really interesting in our own research, and what we've seen is that SDRs are 3 times more likely to connect with a hot lead that was sourced by a virtual assistant versus not being sourced by a virtual assistant, meaning they're just doing it out on their own. That's an amazing number, 3 times more likely to connect. And then from an AE perspective, if the SDR connects, you have that, there is a better conversion rate to pipeline because of just the nature of the higher quality of lead, right? And from a people power perspective, you're saving thousands of hours for your people. Your people don't have to do this part. They can focus on the other part, which was that creating value, demonstrating the value, building those trusted relationships. For AEs, they get super excited because it's better quality opportunities. It's not just that they're getting more at bats, they're getting better at bats. And so your average is going to go up. And then they can focus on building those trusted relationships, right? It's really the difference between being a partner in that opportunity versus just being just a transactional facilitator. And on the customer growth and success side, I mean, we're able to see growth anywhere from 25% to 50% increase in those key retention metrics that you're looking and focusing on. And so how can you create more value out of your customer? So not only do you have a better experience that you see, but you're starting to see tremendous value being delivered as a result of this adoption. And the people can then focus on delivering those excellent experiences. So now we get to level 4. And I know we're running out of time and there's just a lot of content here. So level 4, autonomous assistance. What are we talking about here? What we're fundamentally talking about now is that not only do you have, it's not just departmental adoption. You've gone to as you can see, if you've got marketing, sales, and customer success adopting this, that's multi-department. Now we're talking about using this at a global level, right? Across the entire life cycle worldwide. And in this example, the virtual assistant obviously is autonomous, needs to really, I think what's different here between level 3 is kind of 2 fundamental things. Here it's around understanding the historical changes in context as it's shifting and moving across kind of that multi-department modal. And then being able to understand the global use, right? The fact, can it handle different languages and different cultures and different regions? So let's just talk first about global use. Your virtual assistant, if you want to use it globally, I think it just goes without saying it has to have multi-language and cultural support. I would say a lot of people are starting to tackle the multi-language. And that is something where, in this example, if let's say that lead is received, the virtual assistant reaches out in English, the lead expresses interest in French. Can the virtual assistant now come back and speak in its language, in that language of French, and continue the conversation? The lead responds in French. The virtual assistant knows how to handle that. And then the virtual assistant knows how to follow up in French. So here you started in one language, you shifted to another, and you're engaging in that conversation there, right? There's other instances of the ways that you could do language support and shift. What is yet to be developed and what we need to really kind of build into this is better cultural support. How do we understand, how do we have cultural empathy in these conversations, and how do we make sure that those interactions are feeling more human-like? And that's something where, I think all of us are trying to aspire to get to. I think the second area of aspiration is really capturing that historical exchange and context, not just within the department use, that you can do, but it's as it's going through the different departments because of the journey that customer is on, going from that first visitor to then prospective buyer to actual customer and then lifelong customer, and all the experiences that come with it. Now, this is something that actually I think is super important across an organization to think about, is how are you defining the moments of truth across your organization, and how is that leading to desired outcomes? And if you think about a moment of truth, is every preference or exchange or analytical input to drive the most authentic experience and driving towards those outcomes. Now, first you need to establish those within your organization, but as you're experiencing and having them between yourself and customers, how are you capturing those? And my point is, now you want to be able to take those historical exchanges and feed it into your virtual assistant. Your virtual assistant should be able to use that to then deliver the most authentic experience that always is heading toward that desired outcome. This is yet another level of growth that you should expect over the next I'd say let's say 2 to 5 years happening with virtual assistants over time. So I know we're running out of time. We talked about a lot, Cheryl. Just kind of, do you want to summarize all of that into this? You get the fun task of doing
Absolutely. I'm going to bring it to a close. Feel free to reach out. But, when you really do take a look at this maturity model, it's absolutely essential. There's a lot of information here. And it really is about being that human automation, the collaboration, and making that norm. And businesses need to scale themselves. So while most companies really are potentially at level 1 and 2, there's really room for experimentation and innovation. And that's where you're going to really understand the value and create this competitive differentiation in the future. So it's about leveraging context and personalization to make success win for your competitive differentiation in the future.
Awesome. And so with that, folks in the audience, we'd love to open it up for maybe 1 or 2 questions if you have them. And of course, as Cheryl mentioned, this is available for your viewing at a later time. So just want to thank everybody, especially Cheryl, for your time today. This was awesome. I learned so much.
I learned, it's great. You really have to do more and scale your workforce. And that's what today is about.
Totally. For sure. For sure. All right. I mean, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to open that up. I think you have to untap mute if you are able to do so. Otherwise, our moderator would have to do that for you. But if you have any, please don't hesitate to ask. And if you don't, no worries, send them in. You know how to contact us. I will go back to the speaker session. You've got both Cheryl and my email addresses. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, and we're going to share the model so you'll be able to really understand and how you can grow across the levels. If there were some questions there. Absolutely. I'm looking at chat just in case.
Yep.
So, oh, wait, here. Yeah, they came in under chat. I'm going to just read one. Sorry. One did come through. How long does it take to implement some of these? I think you kind of went over that, but
yeah,
it really depends on the use case.
God,
yeah.
It really depends. Okay, it really depends on the use case, and it depends on, I have to really say this, it depends on the vendor. Some are, if it's a simplistic single use case and the vendor, that's all they're focused on, you could probably get up and running relatively quickly, let's say for a chatbot. But a lot of times they're not, and they have to, even if getting kind of the technology in place, it's getting all that business workflow, the actual text interaction written, that takes a really long time. I have to say, one of the things here at Conversica we really pride ourselves in, we spend a lot of time developing a very deep conversation library. It means that you don't have to write a single line of text. Conversica put a lot of time so our customers have 0 code requirements. You don't have to code a darn thing. We could get people up and running in just 2 weeks with a virtual assistant to do level 3 behavior. So the level 3 that you saw, you can get level 3 behavior starting in just 2 weeks. That's not the case for every vendor, and that's why we really recommend that when you use this maturity model to kind of understand kind of not only the value and the experience you're going to get, but their depth and how much of that comes out of, quote unquote, out of the box, and how much of that really needs to be coded by either somebody in your organization or somebody that they're gonna offer to help you.
Yeah, so they're coming through in chat. I don't know if we have the time or if you wanted to answer it after. There was a question on the libraries and the different verticals.
Yeah,
so take that offline, or do we have time to answer it right now?
I'll answer that last one, and then we can get going. So in terms of the conversation library, as you can see, again, the use cases we support are very much so against marketing, sales, and customer success. So our library supports those use cases, and exactly those, when you think about, there's more conversations beyond the ones that I showed. But that being said, we support, multi-industry. So telecom, technology, manufacturing, financial services. we support also the transportation industry. So, you know, multi-industry, B2B, a lot of B2B focus around complex sales and customer service and support. So there's some ideas there for you. But absolutely, I would recommend taking a look closer at the 451 model and seeing kind of how that can help you think about not only your initial investment, but then your future growth requirements.
That sounds great. So let's share it after.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we're wrapped up here. If there's any more questions in the chat, Cheryl and I will tackle them independently and send it back to you. But otherwise, we thank you for your time, and you guys have a great, great day.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Thanks, Cheryl.